You're listening to the Secure AF podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. My name's Andrew Hickman. This is the Secure AF podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Dax Dunbar. Today we're going to be talking about SOC things, specifically what is a SOC, what does the SOC do, and some things that we see in the SOC. To kind of start it out, let's talk about what is a SOC, Dax.
Yeah, so most of the time when people hear the word SOC, they're thinking of, what you put on your foot before your shoe.
All the time.
All the time. What that actually means is it's SOC, stands for Security Operations Center, and it's where we security engineers monitor the network and anything that's coming across on your endpoints, all the kind of security events and logs, all the fun stuff like that.
Yeah, so what kind of tools do we utilize on our end for SOC monitoring for customers or businesses or whatever?
So the two main tools we use are the SIEM, like ArmorPoint, and the EDR, such as CrowdStrike. Those are our two main tools that we use with our customers. We use a lot of other tools, such as VMware, to run malware and stuff we find in environments, because we like to see what that malware actually does, analyze it, and get fully familiar with systems.
Yeah, we've got some sandboxes in our environment where we like to get a hold of malware or new things or things coming in through a network that we've captured and play around with it, see what it's trying to do, and get threat intelligence on that. And we'll touch on that later. So we use, ArmorPoint as a SIEM, CrowdStrike as an EDR. What differentiates those two from each other? Like, why would you need both, and why not just one?
So with EDR, the acronym EDR stands for Endpoint Detection and Response. CrowdStrike is our main tool for visibility into endpoint specifically. That would be your laptops, your servers, your computers, desktops, such as that. And that helps us find malware on a host or suspicious activity that is on one of those hosts.
Right. So as long as it's a device that can have CrowdStrike on it, it can be protected.
Correct. With devices that can't have stuff like that protected, which would be your networking devices or just general networking activity like password spraying or user accounts locked out or, your Cisco dual proxy, those we see a lot, Purview, IRM policies. That's the stuff that ArmorPoint's node will collect and forward onto us, and we'll get to review.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That's the great explanation is the differences between the two and why it's critical to have both, or at least there's a positive impact on having both aside of just one. And so to touch a little more on the SIEM part of things for ArmorPoint, you're not putting it on something like a Cisco switch in your environment. But what it can do is with sensors or log collectors, you can capture east-west traffic from a core switch. You can capture north-south traffic from a core switch. There's a lot of things you can do with the SIEM, just kind of depending on your level of need. They can also monitor your firewall logs. So if you have a bunch of firewall logs, you have your firewall set to log all traffic in and out. If you have a strict data retention policy or log retention policy, having a SIEM collect all that stuff and hold it for you to where you can go easily search that stuff in the future is awesome. I love seeing stuff like that when we go on site at locations. Makes our life a whole lot easier, for sure. So
especially during IRs.
Oh, especially during IRs. So we'll knock on wood there.
Yeah. It'll also pull information such as when devices aren't sending the proper information.
Yeah.
There are customers.
There's all kind of cool things that SIEMs can do. Once it's in your environment, they get a baseline of what your activity looks like for specific endpoints, users, servers. They might say, hey, for the past 6 months, we haven't seen an activity from this user, and all of a sudden we're getting a bunch of traffic to this suspicious location. An EDR is not really going to pick up on that. But if you get an alert like, hey, this user doesn't work here anymore, so who's using this account? You gives you a whole new list of things to go look at. But having eyes on that kind of stuff is so awesome. I guess we can talk about threat intelligence now. So threat intelligence, we kind of briefly touched on earlier. It's basically gathering data on cyber attacks, cyber threats that we're either collecting ourselves or we're seeing out in the wild somewhere, and then utilizing that data to help harden an organization's security posture. So, especially working in the SOC, talking about our sandboxes and going out there and getting malware, we're able to gather that information of things that we're seeing frequently or new threats or emerging threats. We can sandbox that stuff, or if they're just IOCs that are like, hey, here's a range of IPs that are associated with a known threat actor now. Cool. We can go in and create alerting on that. We can go in and create block lists on firewalls for those kind of things. And then especially, I know just as an example with CrowdStrike, we had an event not too long ago for a customer where CrowdStrike absolutely successfully stopped a potential incident.
From a known threat actor.
Yeah, from a known threat actor. So we want to kind of talk about that a little bit as much as we can. That'd be fine.
Yeah, I would just say, like, here at Alias, we've always had it drilled into us that we don't want to be a reactive SOC. We want to be a proactive SOC. So beginning with threat intelligence and then moving into that IR, how we gather our threat intelligence, be proactive about it, is we're constantly, scouring the internet, going through news feeds. Oftentimes, funnily enough, where proof of concepts are posted is Twitter or X.
Social media, yeah.
Yeah, so, and a lot of threat actors are very vocal about what they're doing when they get a victim.
There's a lot of clout chasing associated with it. Like, not necessarily that there's going to be a huge payoff, but the clout you get for some of the attacks is sometimes all the reward they need.
Yeah, so we'll like to pull those IPs and those hashes as we see them, as we look for them. And then moving into the incident that we had not too long ago, CrowdStrike originally flagged us to some suspicious activity related to one host reaching out to an IP, an IP that has been owned by a threat actor before. It's been used by that threat actor, and it immediately flagged it. And CrowdStrike does the cool thing where it not only flags the IP as suspicious, but it'll also give you more context into it. CrowdStrike's very good at correlating information, where it actually gave us context, said, hey, we've seen this IP used for malicious purposes before. This is pretty serious activity.
Look into this. Yeah,
that we came in as
protocol. Yeah, for sure.
We immediately looked into it. We're like, yeah, this is pretty suspicious. We called up our customer and said, hey, we're seeing this. This is what you need to do. We're locking machines down. We're quarantining files and machines, all the fun stuff like that to try to prevent, east-west, north-south traffic from that environment.
Yeah, trying to prevent lateral movement for sure. Yeah, so what it looked like, there was an unknown application or a known application. It was just unknown that was on there to them. It was just a very old, previously legitimate application that was running in memory.
And open to the internet.
And some threat actors or someone was digging around and found a way in, and they utilized it. Thankfully, due to CrowdStrike and how we set up our SOC and how we react to things, that device got network contained. It allowed us a little more time to do our investigation, where we identified the process itself that was the concern. Dax was able to create a custom search for that process across all endpoints in that environment. A couple others popped up, which we were grateful of. So, but from there, we were able to close up that weakness, you might say, and move another day, go on to another day without huge concern. So it was kind of a wake up call for any company that goes through something like that, where you think you have a strong security posture, but some obscure application once used 10 years ago is sitting out there, and it's not showing up where you think it should be. So, it's just running in memory constantly. So, definitely CrowdStrike helped save someone's, you know, business on that one.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I would just say, validate software validation, like when you're changing MSPs or moving from an MSP to internal IT, validate that all that software that was used by the previous company is.
For sure. And that can be tough to do.
Oh yeah.
Especially when you have a really large organization and you're going through and, who's thinking to check and running memory for stuff?
Especially if you're not an IT folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if you're going through and you're just, I'm going through control panel programs and features, I don't see anything in here, but there's a sneaky little application running in memory there, just waiting. And that happens sometimes. So, but again, thankfully, it was caught and identified and, researched and investigated, and it was closed up. So that's, how the EDR operates there is, protected that endpoint. It saw a connection from an outside source to that endpoint from a known suspicious or a known IOC. So partner that with a SIM or a SIEM, and, if you have that SIEM collecting your north-south traffic from the firewall, or traffic from that endpoint, you would have seen that traffic starting to come through, before it got to the endpoint. You probably would have seen, probably would have seen whoever that was out there poking around, looking at places, probably would have received an alert on it. At least how we have, our system set up is like, hey, if there's an IOC poking around, like you're seeing that traffic, you're going to get an alert. Hey, this is kind of suspicious. We haven't seen this type of activity before. So that's just kind of another, the best way to explain it is that there's always going to be risk. It's just the fact of the matter. It's the way of life on the internet now. There's always going to be risk. What you can do as an individual or an organization is try to mitigate that risk as best as possible with what tools are available. And so whether that's like, hey, we need to get, endpoint protection, EDR on all these devices. Hey, let's throw a SIEM in here. Whatever you can do to enhance your security posture, we're for it. Again, the game is risk mitigation here, not trying to make yourself absolutely impervious. If you can take the time to have your environment be as hardened as possible and not be a hard target for an attacker, that's a great sign of security. In our experience, the threat actors don't tend to spend a lot of time trying to go after a very hardened target. More commonly, they're looking for low-hanging fruit. They want the easy access, or like, hey, this is a open VPN, SSL VPN, and I can brute force this, password because the username is simple and there's no two-factor authentication on it, so I can get in this way. And if you can get in that way and move around, then while if you have something like, unless you're monitoring your firewall logs all the time and you're looking for, hey, who's connecting to these users, at what times and what IPs and thousands of logs, which is, it's a full job in of itself.
Because I'm sure a hospital with 10 people is going to have one IT person
exactly
until 3 a.m. watching firewall.
Yeah. I mean, most, unless, you might have some large corporations out there or having a on-site SOC is more and more prevalent.
Absolutely.
But that tends to be, your large corporations. You're a small, medium business, which is a lot of where we see these recent attacks coming from or towards small, medium business. They're not going to have a SOC. That's a lot of money. While, we provide those kinds of services as well. And so having a SIEM, what it allows you to do is if you start seeing those, if it starts collecting logs with this data it's seeing where, hey, we don't have MFA on this VPN and this is a simple username, but we see this connection that just happened from, Istanbul,
Might be a little suspicious.
Yeah. Get an alert on it. And that way you get that monitoring, that alerting, you can action it without it just kind of slipping through.
Absolutely.
So,
a lot of those password spraying, we might not reach out to a customer just for password spraying because, you can't geofence yourself.
It happens all the time. I mean, it's a constant thing. If you have a VPN open to the internet, it's going to be password sprayed.
Absolutely.
All the time.
Absolutely.
That is just, again, a fact of life at this point.
But as a SIEM helps us correlate. We see those password spraying, we see those invalid login attempts, and we see one valid login attempt.
Yeah. Is there a user being targeted?
Absolutely.
So
do they have the username?
And that's why it's important to have that data logged and collected and reviewed so you can get those alertings and actually action on it before it turns into an incident.
Yeah, that way you have, all the information to be able to understand start to finish what's going on.
Exactly. All right, I guess we can transition from here over to things we're seeing, like things we're seeing from our SOC perspective, from our tools, our customers. I'm not going to talk about anyone specifically, obviously, but just some of the threats we're seeing rise. We could talk about some of the incident response things we've seen. Like one thing that I would bring up, which is it's not uncommon, but sometimes we see the business sectors specifically that are getting targeted kind of shift every once in a while. And I would say that the small healthcare is definitely being hit pretty hard right now. The last several of our incident response that came in are from small healthcare related businesses, and not a hospital. Not
like your local clinic or
maybe
like local
small clinics or small specialist groups or things like that, and they're going after companies or people with HIPAA data, and
a lot of those kind of attacks are those ransomware events because they know those healthcare companies need their data like the next day, if not right now.
Well, along with that, there's a lot of reporting that, they're bound to. There's a lot of policy that they're bound to. And it can be a very difficult and painful situation for them. And I think, a lot of it, kind of what we touched on earlier is, because there's smaller shops, they don't necessarily either have the need that they believe or a want or the ability to bring a SOC in to do this kind of stuff for them, or at least an on-prem SOC, as I might call it, because we provide those SOC services from here. We can do monitoring from wherever you're at. We've got some kind of solution for you. And so with these smaller companies that it's one guy running an entire IT infrastructure, so that could be a couple servers, 8 or 9 endpoints, a firewall, all kinds of stuff. And it's one guy's doing the whole thing. And
security kind of falls by the wayside there.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's not just IT that they're doing too. They can be, maybe they're also a nurse or also a receptionist.
For sure. Yeah. A lot of times it's the individuals wearing multiple hats,
especially in those small businesses with 2, 3, 5 people in the office.
Yeah. So we're definitely seeing that type of activity come through, and it's been through, a lot of it's just been from lack of access controls or misconfigurations, honestly. Whether it's ranging from, someone had RDP open on a server and didn't have it locked down to anything specific, and it was just open and people could poke at it until they could get into it, or they found that it was a Windows Server version that had known vulnerabilities on it. They could poke at it and get in that way. And once you're in, if you don't have, if that's not something you're watching all the time and you're not getting alerting on it,
they can have access for months.
They're in there like for as long as they want. And, especially if they know if they can look at time frames when, hey, they can look at logs and see when people are on and doing things with this device, and they just don't do anything. So, your only hope of catching them at that point in time is that you happen to look at this device that they're on at the time that they're doing stuff with it. Or you notice that something's been installed. Someone installed WinRAR in Russian,
That's why we stereotypically see attacks happen more often around busy times of the year. Your Christmas, Thanksgiving,
Definitely.
a lot of holidays and weekends early in the morning, depending on the time zone you're in.
And that also creates more, benefit for the threat actors. The companies end up having more of an incentive to pay the ransom gamble. Whether hey, do we pay the ransom and do we actually get this stuff back, or are they just conning us out of more stuff? So, it's unfortunately it's a dirty game. But again, there are solutions out there to help harden environments and protect infrastructure, be it from endpoints to firewalls, start to finish. There's stuff out there. Monitoring is critical. Actually, the alerts going out is one thing, but someone actually looking at it and actioning it and going, hey, is there something to this?
Yeah, I can look at emails all day. I can receive emails all day, but if I don't look at them, then it's pointless to have those tools.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of benefit to it. There is, it does take effort and some time, but at the end of the day, when it comes to just enhancing your security posture all around and being able to sleep at night, there's a huge boon there. I say that kind of jokingly because, when you're in an IR, you're not sleeping. No one's sleeping.
Yeah, we are 24/7 monitoring. So we see some pop up overnight. Who's ever on call, or even oftentimes when we're not on call.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I see this. I'm going to take care of this real quick because I get curious. I like to know what's going on.
Yeah. We have our assemble the team moments. It's kind of difficult. I mean, here recently, we typically have to tell people, no, you got to sit this one out, because when something comes in, people want to get engaged. They want to help out. We find this stuff very interesting. We love helping customers. We love helping people. It's a demanding job, but it's very rewarding. So,
yeah, I would just say, like, for us specifically, I always compare our team to an Alaskan ice fishing boat, because it's not a bunch of A, B, and C players. It's a small team of S players and A players, with the S players pushing those A players to be better.
For sure.
It's that small team that's really passionate and really knows what they want to do and wants to be here.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, man. I like it. I think talking about Alias specifically in our SOC, I pride our guys and myself on great customer service and making sure we're actually working for our customers. We operate based on a trust no one kind of attitude. So we might have an alert that comes in that appears relatively benign, but we look at everything. We treat everything as being serious until we know for certain that it's not.
I've seen the Dell Support Assist Remediation Service.exe pop up in several environments 30 times over just in the past week. And
we treat all of them serious.
This couple of weeks. And I still go through, is it in the right directory? Is it in the right, is it the right hash? Is it doing the things that I know that it should be doing?
Yeah.
Just because I want to make sure that it is what it says it is.
Well, we've seen that kind of stuff, though. We've seen those supply chain attacks.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of things where, like, hey, there's an application that got compromised and pushed out. And
it's a legitimate application,
yeah.
And the customer used it legitimately, but it wasn't utilized legitimately in that certain case.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, the application itself was compromised somewhere, whether that was an inside threat for the organization who pushed it. But we've seen that exact thing where, a threat actor got into access to this application, changed things to make things malicious. That application got pushed out, people installed it, and now all of a sudden you have this malicious application that is, for every other purpose, legitimate, is now is malicious, and you got backdoors into, lots of places.
I mean,
It's happened. Yeah, really it's the threat of it just being, hey, I've seen this, I recognize this name, this is definitely legitimate, and then just ignoring it is also a threat, so we have to action everything.
Yes. Even if it's just 2 minutes, like I said earlier, verify.
Yeah.
Is it where it's supposed to be? Is it reaching out to what it's supposed to be? Is it reaching out at all? Or is it writing a new?
Where is it reaching out? Yeah. What is it doing? Is it doing what we actually expect, or is it connecting to Narnia somewhere?
Your driver, your driver updates might touch volume shadow snapshot, but your browser probably shouldn't.
Yeah. So, again, it's the point of the SOC and having a team that can monitor that stuff. And again, mainly so you can sleep at night and know that, you're a hardened target. And if something does happen, there's a team that has your back. So I definitely, having a team around me and having a team that really loves what we do to help support our customers, it's fantastic. It's so gratifying when something does actually happen, because a lot of times, we sit there and we go through these alerts, and it's like, false positive, which is great. Much rather have all false positives than actual attacks. But
I do get a hit of dopamine every time I see that. I'm like, oh, this is real.
Yeah.
Let's
go. Let's collect this. Let's sandbox stuff. Yeah. Grabbing that application that ran in memory and start launching it, playing with it, figure out, hey, how are you utilizing this? What are you connected to? How are you open? It's fun. It's fun. But it's a lot more fun whenever you stop it before it turns into something. Yeah. And then we can take those things that we've learned, go create some custom rules, and then just go harden every other environment that we're monitoring.
Oh yeah.
So
I like to take notes too, because I'm never going to know everything, and I'm never going to remember everything that I've seen, but it helps me if I think I recognize this, and just put it in my notes, or, search bar through my notes.
Yeah.
And see like, oh, I have seen this before. Okay. I'll write out, what did I see it do originally? What is the legitimate version, or was it legitimate, supposed to be doing? And is it doing what it says it's supposed to be doing?
Yeah. Do the old, the tribal knowledge OneNote, or something.
Oh yeah. I highly recommend taking notes if you're in any kind of industry, but especially so.
It never hurts. And things change so rapidly in this field too. So, one day we're seeing, ransomware IRs where everything's being encrypted, and, the next day they're just deleting it and moving on with their day.
Mm-hmm.
So, things change, tactics change.
Threat actors change.
Yeah, threat actors change. They dissolve, they form new groups, they change locations, change tactics, change names. The game remains the same though.
Oh, still can
get in. They want the ransom. They want to try to get in and make your life difficult. They want it to be where it's easier for you just to, pay the money and hope you get everything back, rather than,
reach out to a company to try to help you recover.
Yeah. So, but that's why we're here. We're here to help. We like to hop in, get engaged, again, help secure environments, find loose ends, monitor, alert on stuff, work with people, figure out, hey, how can we be better? So, and again, I've said it multiple times, but so you can sleep at night is what it comes down to.
Yeah. We survive on caffeine so you can sleep.
True statement. Well, I think that about wraps us up for this episode of Secure AF. Again, my name is Andrew Hickman. This was Dax Dunbar. Thanks for your time. Bye.
The Secure AF podcast is a production of Alias Cybersecurity. Visit us online at aliascybersecurity.com. All rights reserved.